Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the weekly landscape update video I do here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B, standing in the big group of zinnias for this season. This is a bed that's 2 years in a row now been zinnias. Eventually they'll burn out and there's some lantana in here that's already made it up to the top. But I wanted to show these off because I think this is probably the peak bloom time of the summer here, right here at the end of June, beginning of July, and they're all just spectacular. This was a big mix of different varieties, and so if you're going to grow giant zinnias, get a lot of packs of different colors and just blend them all together, because it turns out like this. It's planted in a lot of compost, and they're very, very happy, and they're all interesting and unique. Just want to take time here. We're filming a little earlier in the afternoon than we normally do, just trying to show off some of the bees. This Asclepias tuberosa, or butterfly weed, is kind of in peak flower right this minute, and you can see the bees that are on it. These are honeybees. Last year we didn't have a lot of honeybees out here, so I'm guessing that somebody's got a box near us, or they figured it out and are sending out the soldiers, but we have way more honeybees. Still got a ton of native bees out here. You'll see that in just a minute, the native lots and lots of native bees, but you can see the activity we have out here. Each week, as you're doing these weekly update videos, just showing off some of the perennials that come on later and later. We have these early flowering things and then mid-flowering things, and then Agastache season finally here toward the end of June. This is Blue Fortunes, and you can see, I'm 6 feet tall, and this thing is peaked out at 5 feet. I will say, if you have trouble, sometimes some of the newer cultivars of Agastache just are not that vigorous to me. I mean, they're interesting varieties. They may have gold foliages or variegations or interesting looking, but I have found a lot of them not to be as vigorous or as hardy, or returning each year. Blue Fortunes is super reliable, and it will come back every year, bigger, better, fuller, and you can see how big it is. Earlier in the day when the sun was on it, the bees were all over it. It has since slowed down a bit. This one's called Golden Jubilee, and you can see the gold foliage. It seems to be pretty vigorous. Here's one of our native bumblebees here, trying to find his way. And this is it's a beautiful plant. It's a standout. We'll see over the winter, how well it returns next year. But again, I've had trouble with some of these newer varieties not returning year to year, but it looks great right now. We shall see.
Hi, if you remember, I'm Stephany, and I just wanted to show off the bees that we have in the front right now. The honeybees were in the back, but right now, getting some sun in the front are these wonderful bumblebees. They are devouring the echinacea here in the front, going to the verbena, checking out the white echinacea, taking on the monarda that's just about done. They're just happy campers living in this front bed for sure. Here in the front garden, we also have our Sombrero series echinacea, the yellow one, and the bees have really enjoyed that as well. Of course, now I'm talking about it, they've gone away, but we have some great bees enjoying this Agastache as well. Just beautiful. Before we started on the garden, there were just a few plants that were existing. One of them is this butterfly bush. It's pretty old, I believe. It's got a pretty substantial base to it, but it always is home to tons of pollinators. I'm not sure what the variety is, but they're super happy there. Right next to it, we got one of those, we talked about getting plants from neighbors, plants that mean something to you. This is from a neighbor, and it's a Joe-Pye weed. I think between the butterfly bush being there and it being a little bit shady, it is reaching a bit, although they do get really large anyway. It's just starting to bloom, so not too long from now, it's going to be absolutely covered with pollinators.
So Steph showed you the Joe-Pye weed in the front garden, which is 10 to 11 feet tall at this point. It's probably going to get a little taller before it fully opens up. This is a dwarf called Little Joe, and again, it's probably 5.5 feet tall. It is stretching a bit because there's this area in the back garden moves into the shade fairly early, but it's, and you can see it leaning out just a bit, but it's totally happy, and it's absolutely loaded with flower buds. When these open, this is one of the best pollinator plants there are, and a native, this is a nativar. This is a named cultivar. The one out front is the straight native. I showed the moon dance hydrangea last week out by the front garden gate. It may have just been in the video just then as well, when we showed off the yellow echinacea. If you back that up a bit, you'll see it. This is white wedding. There are 2 of them here, and there actually is a 3rd one out by the road. It was sitting here last year and it got transplanted, but you can see these 2 are in kind of part shade. They start out this lime green color, just like most of the hydrangea paniculatas, and they'll get whiter and whiter as the weeks go on. Again, it's in a little more shade, and that's why it's stretching for height just a bit. So it's up to about 5 feet tall at this point. I can cut this thing down. These bloom on new growth. And so in the winter time, if I want to, I can cut them down to 3 feet every year, and they'll just bloom at this height. So you can kind of do whatever you want to do. But look how full this is. I want to kind of point out, I've talked about the sturdy stems this thing has many times and how it's holding them up big and tall. Another thing is, look how full this is, despite the fact that it is stretching for light a little bit. The leaves are quite large on it. And so despite the fact that it is a bit thin down in the middle, right there, you see that? The size of the foliage on this particular variety kind of hides it and makes it look like it's quite full. But I just continue to be impressed with this white wedding hydrangea. One of these weekly tour update videos we did recently, we showed all the hosta in the landscape, and then went and got like 8 or 9 more, maybe 10 that are about to show you that are going in. There's a nursery that's by appointment only called Green Hill Farms in Franklinton, North Carolina. The gentleman who owns it is a prolific hosta breeder, probably several of the varieties. If you have a lot of hosta, it's possible you have one of his introductions. This variety right here is called Little Devil. It'll only get about maybe 5 inches tall, 12 inches wide. It's got a narrow curly leaf with a small amount of variegation. Just a great textured variety. Flower spikes are coming up on it now. So each year, of course, it'll be a little larger, but I like the diminutive nature of this one. It's hard to kind of pick. I got so many great varieties up there. It's just really kind of hard to pick. This one's going right here. I'm just going to show planting one of them, and then we're going to bounce around and show you the other varieties we got. Again, a few weeks back, there was another video with the rest of the hosta varieties. We are kind of lucky that we don't have, we're in an urban area here and don't have deer issues. Obviously, if you have deer issues, you're probably going, why would somebody have that many hosta? But these are well-rooted, small plants, but well-rooted. Of course, with a hosta, you don't need much. You can, I can probably get 2 or 3 out of that one. But tucked in here in a partly shady space, a few wood chips around it, and a perfect little addition to the edge of the path in the back. Next up is another one that was placed along a path here in the front garden, tucked up under the Edgeworthia. Doing this with a lot of shrubs. The shrubs that will stretch themselves up a bit because most of this garden is part shade. The Edgeworthia has kind of limbed itself up a bit. So perfect place to pop in this little Venetian Skies hosta. This one will get maybe 1 foot to 1.5 feet tall, 3 feet in width over the years. It's got a pale lavender flower on it, but it has this really great bluish green foliage that really plays off nicely with this Edgeworthia. So looking forward to this one going to sleep. It's one thing about these hosta here in midsummer going in the ground, they're perfectly fine planting them. In fact, you can dig them up and divide them, but I wouldn't expect a lot of additional growth on them during the summer. They tend to go into their kind of a summer dormancy. They'll flower, but they won't put. Most of the growth happened when they came out of the ground, and most of the additional growth they're going to get year to year is in the early part of the year. So looking forward to it going to sleep one winter, because when it comes up, it'll be 2 or 3 times larger when it comes back. Next up is one that may need to be transplanted already. This variety is called Amos. It just went in the ground a couple days ago, but now we're kind of rethinking it. This is a really giant hosta. This one can get 3 feet tall and 6 feet wide. Has white flower spikes. Just a big, beautiful leaf. The leaves in the future can be, 16, 18 inches long, probably 14 inches wide, something like that. But really a massive, massive growing hosta. Has slightly lighter back to the leaf than the front. So when you're seeing them come up like this, it has kind of a two-tone look to it. Again, I think when this one comes back up out of the ground next year, it's going to be, double or triple the size it is currently. So it may need to be relocated shortly thereafter. I've got it tucked in currently under this Miss Kim lilac, and there's plenty of room here, but it may outgrow this space pretty quickly.
I am so excited about this hosta. Jim and I had the pleasure to tour a gorgeous landscape up in North Raleigh, the home of Jim and Lynn Swanson, and they were kind enough to recognize how much I loved this hosta and send me home with it. It is named after the strip that goes down the center. If you look closely, you can see it's got sort of a chartreuse, a creamy white, and a green. Just a beautiful layering of colors. It's called striptease. It is a super tease because it's just so beautiful. Apparently, early on, it comes out a little bit bluish green as well. So it's just got so much to it. This plant was the 2005 American Hosta Growers Plant of the Year, and I am very happy to have it. It's fragrant lavender flowers in the late spring, summer. So can't wait to find a spot for it and enjoy it year to year. Jim and I had the pleasure of visiting Green Hill Farm north of Raleigh to see hostas. And it was a wonderful day, or a wonderful morning anyway. And one of the highlights was this hosta right here. It's called First Blush, and it's an introduction by the owner of the farm, Bob Solberg. He, from the sounds of things, spent a lot of time trying to engineer a red-stemmed, red-leaved hosta, and this is his most successful introduction to date. It's called First Blush. In the spring, when it comes out, it is an amazing reddish pink leafed hosta with, of course, the red petioles. It's absolutely stunning when it comes out. And the red stems are something unique and beautiful as well. Bob Solberg, which did this one, also did one that a lot of us are familiar with called Curly Fries, which we have in the corner here. Beautiful undulating leaf, thin lanceolate undulating leaves. Just beautiful hosta. This hosta selection right here is called Blue Mouse Ears. It's a miniature, so in this case we've chosen to put it near the steps, so it can almost be sort of like a rock garden or a crevice plant of sorts. It's got, gray-green, blue-green foliage, and then it does have, of course, small flowers that apparently come out in sort of like a bulbous form and then open up. So I'll be interested to see how that comes out. One of the neat things about this plant right here, I think most of you know that Jim likes chartreuse and variegation. So we have a whole lot of variegated hosta. This one is a lovely green selection that we've put right here. This selection is called Parthenon. We had selected all the hostas we were going to get, and before we left, this one was just sort of playing on my mind. I love the clear white centers and the light green foliage on the outside. It's just exquisite to me. It gets about 15 inches tall and about 3 feet wide. Apparently it's a bit slow growing, which is okay because, you know, we have so many other plants anyway. And it is, I'm told that it likes some morning sun, so we'll be putting it somewhere with some good morning sun. Such a beautiful variegated hosta.
Next up is one called Miss Micah, which has a great green center and a kind of a chartreuse or yellow edge on it. Some of them, the yellow occurs in the middle. Gets a lavender flower spike on it. This one can reach about 18 inches tall and maybe 3 feet wide. Put it right here next to the gold oak leaf hydrangea. They look great together. Again, I think people sometimes we overthink things and need to space. You know, they're not spaced properly. They're not spaced properly. It doesn't matter. The hosta will come out and grow this direction if it needs to, or over the rock if it needs to. The oak leaf hydrangea was broken off. It had a piece over here. I don't know how it got broken actually, but it doesn't matter. It's putting on a new piece here. This thing, they'll figure it out, okay? And when they don't figure it out anymore, and I think that the oak leaf hydrangea is not playing nice with it, I'll come pop it out of the ground and I'll move it to some other place, but which isn't that big of a deal with the hosta. I wouldn't want to move the oak leaf hydrangea in the future, but the hosta is easy to move. So in the meantime, while I wait for it to grow, and it's going to take a few years for this gold oak leaf hydrangea to really get any size to it, this is going to look great next to it. And one day it'll get scooped out and it'll find a new home. Next up is a sport of one called Designer Jeans. It's called Fashionista. It also has the red petioles, like we saw on the one in the front garden. But the red stem doesn't run all the way up into the leaf like the other one did. We start to get a white variegation, a white edge on the leaf on this one. So similar, but slightly different. I love the red. I love the red stems or the red petioles. It's just really striking, and especially against that white. This one will reach about 14, 15 inches in height, maybe 30 inches in width in the future. Again, by the time it comes back the third year and it's that big, it's probably time to chop it and divide it anyway, give part of it away, you know, some point in the future. But I think when it comes up next year, it'll fill in a nice little space right here. So that finishes up the hosta that we got from Green Hill Farms. Just a great collection. Again, that place is by appointment only if you ever wanted to get up with them. He also does some mail order, I think, on his website. The Crinum Lily in the front garden, this candy stripe, was planted last year. It can take these a little while to really establish themselves and bloom heavily and get the flowers up big and tall. This one had a flower spike on it earlier in the season. It flopped over almost immediately, and I was like, "Oh, that was kind of a bummer." But it's got a second flower spike, which is kind of great, you know, which is great. They bloom for a while as long as it holds this thing up. It'll finish one, and you can deadhead that one, and new ones will come out and continue to open. But a great plant. One thing I will warn you on is if one of these ever anchors itself in the ground, you better put it where you want it because they are very, very difficult to dig out once they get themselves anchored. So I'll finish this video up out in the front garden space that I think most represents the Clown College theme of the landscape design out here. The swath, the annual swath, is just on fire right this minute. Everything's looking great. Finally getting some height differential in here. We've got some celosia and a few other things in here that are supposed to spike up and be a little taller, but everything had been coming up exactly even. So finally, the celosia and the coleus, I think, are finally going to spike up above everything and have some height differentiation. But salvia blooming, butterfly bush blooming, moon dance hydrangeas, you know, come a long way here in a week since I showed it off last week. And this corner, I think, really is kind of on fire right now. Thank you guys for following along with these weekly landscape updates. We'll be back next week with another one. I think, again, each week we're seeing more and more of the summer flowering perennials and annuals. The things that really like the heat are kicking in now.